In 44 BC, inside Rome, power wasn't taken all at once. It was tested first. A look, a favor, a small compromise. The same principle appears in modern relationships. Narcissists rarely begin with open control. They start with tiny boundary tests that seem insignificant. A late-night demand, a disrespectful joke, a promise they never intended to keep. The question is simple. When they tested your limits, what did your response teach them? Most people imagine manipulation as a dramatic event. They picture shouting, threats, obvious cruelty. But the most effective boundary violations arrive quietly. They arrive disguised as normal. A text after midnight. A request that feels inconvenient, but not outrageous. A joke that stings but can be explained away. A favor that becomes an expectation. The Stoics understood something modern people often forget. Character is revealed by what you tolerate repeatedly, not by what you condemn occasionally. This video is not about diagnosing anyone. It is about recognizing patterns. If you are exhausted from explaining yourself, overthinking every interaction, or feeling guilty whenever you protect your time, then you may be encountering boundary testing. And if you keep failing the early tests, the later ones become much harder to escape. What you'll learn. The hidden psychology behind boundary testing. 7 common tests narcissistic personalities often use. Why people pleasers fail these tests, even when they see them. The Stoic response that protects your peace without endless conflict. How to recognize the moment a relationship becomes a training program for your obedience. Watch closely. The first test is usually the easiest one to pass. The tragedy is that most people don't realize they are being tested until the cost becomes enormous. Part 1. The Hidden Economy of Power. Every relationship contains an invisible negotiation. Who initiates? Who adjusts? Who apologizes? Who waits? Who feels guilty? Who gets the benefit of the doubt? Narcissistic personalities pay obsessive attention to this negotiation because it reveals where power actually lives. They are not primarily looking for truth. They are looking for leverage. A healthy person hears no as information. A manipulative person hears no as a challenge. That difference changes everything. Imagine 2 people asking for the same favor. One says, "If you can't do it, no problem." The other says, "I guess I can never count on you." The request is the same. The pressure is not. The Stoics would call this an attempt to control what belongs to another person's judgment. Your time, attention, body, schedule, finances, emotional labor. These are domains that require consent. Boundary testing measures how easily that consent can be extracted through guilt, confusion, urgency, or fear. Here is the critical insight. A boundary test is not merely a request. It is an experiment. The manipulator changes one variable, timing, tone, pressure, disrespect, ambiguity, and observes your reaction. If the experiment succeeds, they repeat it at a higher dose. That is why early incidents often feel too small to confront. They are designed that way. The goal is not immediate domination. The goal is calibration. Think of it like testing a fence. You don't drive a truck through it on the first attempt. You press against one section, then another. You look for weakness. Once weakness is found, the pressure concentrates there. Many viewers make the same mistake at this stage. They ask, "But what if they didn't mean it?" Sometimes they didn't. Intention matters, but repeated pressure after a clear limit matters more. A misunderstanding corrected once is normal. A pattern that returns after clarity is information. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Modern relationships become dyed with the color of repeated exceptions. Every time you override your own limit to avoid discomfort, you teach 2 people something, them that the limit is movable, and yourself that your discomfort matters less than their approval. That is the economy of power, and it is usually negotiated long before anyone says the word narcissist. Part 2. The 7 Boundary Tests. Test 1. The small disrespect. It begins with something deniable. You're too sensitive. Relax, I was joking. Everyone else laughed. The content is less important than the structure. They cross a line, then make your reaction the problem. If you protest, you become humorless, dramatic, insecure, controlling. The original behavior fades into the background. This test is brilliant because it forces you into a defensive position. You start arguing about whether you are sensitive instead of whether the behavior was acceptable. Stoic response: don't litigate your sensitivity. Clarify the line. Joke or not, I don't want to be spoken to that way. Notice what this avoids. No psychological diagnosis. No debate about intent. No essay. A clear standard. If the person respects you, the issue usually ends here. If they are testing boundaries, the pushback often escalates into mockery, guilt, or accusations that you are overreacting. That escalation is the real data. Test 2. The urgency trap. Everything becomes an emergency. I need you right now. If you cared, you'd answer immediately. Why are you ignoring me? The goal is not efficiency. The goal is priority control. Your schedule, sleep, work, family obligations, and mental bandwidth become secondary to their emotional state. People pleasers are especially vulnerable because they confuse responsiveness with love. The manipulator learns that panic creates compliance. Stoic response: separate urgency from importance. I saw your message. I'll respond when I'm available. Healthy relationships can survive delayed responses. Systems built on control often cannot. Test 3. The moving goalpost. You do what was requested. The standard changes afterward. I didn't mean it like that. You should have known. That's not enough. This creates chronic uncertainty. You start overperforming to avoid criticism. The relationship becomes an endless exam with answers revealed only after you fail. Stoic response: force specificity before agreement. What exactly are you asking for? What would completion look like? Ambiguity is fertile soil for manipulation. Clarity is expensive for anyone relying on shifting standards. Test 4. The guilt injection. This is one of the most common tests. After everything I've done for you, I guess I don't matter. You've changed. Notice the pattern. Your boundary is reframed as moral failure. You are not declining a request. You are betraying a relationship. The conversation moves from behavior to character. Stoic response: refuse the character trial. I can care about you and still decline this request. That single sentence collapses a false dilemma that traps many people. Test 5. The information probe. Early in the relationship, they seek unusually detailed personal information. Not always maliciously, but often strategically. What's your biggest insecurity? Who hurt you the most? What are you afraid of? Vulnerability can build intimacy, but rapid, one-sided disclosure harvesting can also create a map of pressure points. Stoic response: pace disclosure. Earned trust is stronger than instant transparency. You do not owe a biography to someone you barely know. Test 6. The isolation nudge. It rarely starts with "stop seeing your friends." It starts with friction. Your friend is toxic. Your family doesn't respect us. Why do you need them so much? One relationship after another becomes inconvenient, suspect, or emotionally expensive. The manipulator positions themselves as the safest, most understanding person in your life. Stoic response: protect independent sources of perspective. Isolation is not intimacy. Test 7. The Consequence Test. This is the final calibration. If you do this, don't expect me to be happy. I'll remember this. Maybe we should take a break. They want to know whether consequences can be manufactured cheaply. If mild disapproval causes you to abandon your limit, stronger pressure becomes unnecessary. Stoic response: accept that boundaries may change access. A limit that exists only when the other person approves of it is not a limit. It is a request for permission. Part 3. Why people pleasers fail the tests. Most people who get trapped in these dynamics are not weak. They are conditioned. They learned that peace is earned by accommodation. They learned that disagreement risks rejection. They learned to scan for emotional weather and adjust themselves before anyone asks. As children, employees, partners, or caregivers, they were rewarded for anticipation and punished for resistance. By adulthood, they can detect tension in a room faster than they can detect their own resentment. This creates 4 vulnerabilities manipulators exploit. Vulnerability 1. You treat discomfort as danger. A healthy boundary often produces temporary discomfort. Someone may be disappointed. They may pout, complain, or withdraw. People pleasers interpret that discomfort as evidence that the boundary was wrong. The Stoic distinction is crucial. Discomfort is not the same as danger. Disapproval is not the same as harm. Vulnerability 2. You over-explain. Over-explaining is an attempt to buy permission through logic. But manipulators rarely need more information. They need more access. Every explanation becomes material for negotiation. I can't tonight because work has been stressful, and I haven't slept well, and my schedule is packed. A simple boundary becomes a debate over whether your reasons are sufficient. Stoic correction: shorter is stronger. I'm not available tonight. Vulnerability 3. You mistake empathy for surrender. You can understand someone's feelings without handing them authority over your choices. Empathy acknowledges emotion. Surrender transfers control. A manipulator wants these concepts fused. Then every sad feeling becomes a command. Vulnerability 4. You wait for certainty. You want proof, a confession, a dramatic event that removes all doubt. Manipulators thrive in the gray zone because uncertainty delays action. By the time the pattern becomes undeniable, you may already be isolated, exhausted, financially entangled, or emotionally dependent. The Stoic approach is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. You do not need certainty about another person's soul to protect your own boundaries. Part 4. The Stoic response: boundaries without drama. Many viewers swing from appeasement to confrontation. They go from, "I guess it's fine," to a 2-hour speech about manipulation, trauma, psychology, and betrayal. The result is often more chaos, not more control. Stoicism offers a quieter path: clear standards, calm delivery, consistent enforcement. Principle 1. State the boundary once. I don't discuss personal matters at work. I'm not available after 10 p.m. I won't continue a conversation if I'm being insulted. Notice the structure: no accusations, no labels, no attempt to control their thoughts. You are describing your participation. Principle 2. Repeat, don't elaborate. Manipulators often try to drag you into justification because justification creates openings. Why? That makes no sense. You're being unfair. Instead of producing a longer argument, restate the boundary. I understand you disagree. I'm still not available after 10 p.m. This feels unnatural at first. People pleasers experience it as rude. In reality, it is how adults communicate limits. Principle 3. End circular conversations. When the same objection has been answered repeatedly, the conversation is no longer information exchange. It is pressure. I've already explained my decision. I'm not going to keep debating it. You are not obligated to participate in infinite negotiations over your own boundary. Principle 4. Let consequences occur. This is the hardest step. If every boundary is followed by your frantic effort to soothe the other person, the old system remains intact. They may be disappointed. They may complain. They may become colder for a while. Those reactions are not proof that the boundary failed. They are often proof that the boundary is new. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." B1. Applied here. Waste less time arguing that your limit is reasonable. Live it. Part 5. The moment you realize you're being trained. There is a specific moment many survivors describe. Not the worst fight. Not the breakup. A quieter realization. They notice they are constantly predicting another person's reaction before speaking. They edit messages 3 times. They delay telling the truth. They hide normal needs. They feel relief when the other person is in a good mood, and dread when they are not. At that point, the relationship is no longer primarily about connection. It is about management. You are managing volatility, managing disappointment, managing accusations, managing withdrawal. Your nervous system becomes a customer service department for someone else's emotions. This is where Stoicism becomes practical, not philosophical. The Stoic asks, what is within my control, my clarity, my availability, my participation, my response, my decision to stay, leave, pause, or limit contact? What is not within my control? Their mood, their interpretation, their guilt tactics, their approval, their willingness to change. Many people destroy themselves trying to control the second list while abandoning the first. A useful diagnostic question is this: if I stopped explaining, defending, and appeasing for 30 days, what would happen? Healthy relationships usually become slightly quieter. Manipulative systems often become dramatically louder because the fuel source has been interrupted. Part 6. Practical script examples. People often understand the theory but freeze in real conversations. Here are concise responses that embody the Stoic approach. Situation: common people-pleaser response. Stoic response: late-night demand. I'm so sorry, I'll try to stay awake and help. I'm offline for the night. I'll respond tomorrow. Disrespectful joke. I know you didn't mean it, but it kind of hurt. Don't joke about me that way. Guilt after saying no. I do care about you. I just have a lot going on, and maybe I can... I care about you, and my answer is still no. Circular argument. Re-explains everything for the 5th time. We're repeating ourselves. I'm ending this conversation. Demand for private information. Shares details to avoid seeming secretive. I'm not comfortable discussing that. Pressure to cancel plans. I guess I can cancel if it means that much to you. I already have plans, and I'm keeping them. Notice what these responses have in common. They are short. They avoid diagnosing motives. They do not ask for permission. They communicate participation, not control. They leave room for the other person to choose their response. That last point is important. A boundary is not, you must never. A boundary is often, if X happens, I will do Y. If I'm insulted, I leave the conversation. If plans change repeatedly, I stop making them. If my privacy is violated, I limit access. You are not commanding the world. You are defining your participation in it. Part 7. What happens when you stop feeding the system? When boundary testing stops working, several reactions are common. Not all manipulative people use all of them, but many use some. Reaction 1. Escalation. The pressure increases temporarily. More texts, more guilt, more urgency. This is often interpreted as proof that the boundary is harmful. It may simply be the extinction burst of a strategy that used to work. Reaction 2. Mockery. Wow, someone's been reading self-help books. You think you're so healthy now? The goal is to make self-respect feel embarrassing. Reaction 3. Victim reversal. I'm the one being mistreated. You're controlling me. A boundary on access is reframed as aggression. This is especially confusing for conscientious people because they genuinely do not want to harm anyone. Reaction 4. Sudden affection. Warmth, apologies, gifts, promises, future plans. Sometimes this reflects real fear of loss. Sometimes it is an attempt to restore the old equilibrium without addressing the underlying pattern. The Stoic test is not, how intense is the apology? It is, does behavior change after the boundary is clear? Words can be emotional weather. Patterns are climate. Reaction 5. Withdrawal. When access becomes expensive, some people simply leave. This can feel devastating. It can also be clarifying. A relationship that survives only when one person has unlimited access to the other was never stable. Part 8. The internal boundary. External boundaries fail when internal boundaries are absent. The deepest shift is not learning clever phrases. It is deciding what you will no longer trade for approval. Ask yourself, what amount of disrespect will I no longer explain away? What level of emotional volatility will I no longer normalize? What private information will I disclose only after trust is earned? What parts of my schedule are not available for negotiation? What behaviors automatically reduce someone's access to me? Write the answers down. People who rely on social pressure often benefit from your uncertainty. A written standard makes you harder to negotiate against because you are negotiating less with yourself. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when we stop trying to control what is not ours. In relationships, that means releasing the fantasy that perfect explanations will produce perfect understanding. Some people understand you and still want more access than you are willing to give. Your job is not to achieve unanimous approval. Your job is to live in alignment with your standards. The test they fear most. Narcissistic boundary testing thrives on 3 things: confusion, guilt, and negotiation. Confusion makes you doubt your perception. Guilt makes you abandon your limit. Negotiation turns your boundary into a contest. The response that disrupts the system is rarely dramatic. It is calm clarity. No. I'm not available. Don't speak to me that way. This conversation is over. Not shouted, not justified, not wrapped in 10 paragraphs of apology. Calm clarity forces a choice. A healthy person adapts. A manipulative person escalates, mocks, guilt trips, or withdraws. Either way, the fog begins to lift. Remember the opening image of Rome. Power was tested through small concessions, long before it was exercised openly. The same is true in modern relationships. The first test is often tiny. The danger is not the size of the first test. The danger is the lesson your response teaches. If you have spent years managing other people's reactions, this may feel unnatural. Start small. One clear limit. One shorter explanation. One conversation you refuse to repeat. One evening you keep for yourself. One no without apology. That is not cruelty. That is self-government. And the boundary narcissistic personalities fear most is not anger, threats, or speeches. It is a person who can tolerate temporary disapproval without surrendering permanent self-respect. If this video helped you recognize a pattern you couldn't name before, subscribe for more Stoic wisdom, dark psychology analysis, and practical lessons on protecting your peace without becoming consumed by conflict. And tell me in the comments, what was the smallest boundary test you ignored that later became a much bigger problem? Sometimes the first crack in the wall was visible from the beginning. The challenge is learning to trust what you saw before the collapse becomes impossible to ignore.